The Sony 50 to 150 f2 lens. I never thought I'd be saying that. What a day.
I took this lens to Iceland, and everything you're gonna see, both in terms of photography and also now video, has been edited in Imagine automatically. There's a link down below if you wanna get started. And you get 1,500 free edits for using that link, so make sure you use that link.
And also everything you're gonna be seeing in terms of video out here in Iceland, and I guess in terms of video in the entire video, everything is handheld on active stabilization in the A7R Mark V.
So here we are with the Sony 50 to 150 f2 lens. It is this big, so it's a little bit bigger than in terms of wideness of a 70-200. It's a little wider, a little more girth, and it's also internal zoom. So as I'm zooming from 50 to 150, nothing's moving, which is really, really nice.
50 to 150 f2. Look at how creamy that bokeh is behind this horse. I'm also on shade white balance. It might be a little too warm for your taste, and if it is, that's fine. You can use a different white balance. You can color correct it. I think that the world looks a little bit better in a sunset. So that's why I choose shade white balance. And usually I'm photographing people and their faces are in the shade. Today though, day one in Iceland, we're gonna go see some icebergs. We're gonna see a big iceberg, also known as a glacier. It hasn't become an iceberg yet. And we're gonna stay at this hotel. It's behind me here. It's pretty crazy.
We'll start with the positives of this lens. So the positives is that you just get to shoot f2 across the entire range. I would say in terms of wedding photography, a 50 to 150 at f2 is an incredible tool. If you follow the channel, you know that I talk about the Tamron 35 to 150 a lot. That is an f2 to f2.8 variable aperture. So when you are at all the way zoomed into 150, you're at f2.8 rather than f2. And 150 millimeters at f2 looks absolutely beautiful.
50 to 150, f2. At a glacier in Iceland.
On the barrel of the lens, you have an autofocus, manual focus slider, as well as a few other function buttons that you can customize and a click, non-click aperture. And there's also a collar on here, so you're able to attach a foot if you want for a tripod or even just to hold. The little nub here doesn't come off. 95 millimeters, so you probably don't have any of those filters, but if you do, awesome. For myself and for wedding days, unless I'm there to do only video, I'm probably not gonna be bringing an ND filter or a CPL or anything, so it is totally fine to get some sort of protective filter. So I think that is fine that it's a bigger thread because it's not a lens I'll be likely using a filter with anyways. If you do wanna get a protective filter, I'd recommend it. It's such a bummer that you buy such an expensive, beautiful piece of glass and you put a less expensive piece of glass over top of the front. For me personally, I typically don't use filters and I'll just use a lens hood. So a lens hood in my experience is as useful as a filter. So a filter, if I'm bouncing my lens accidentally, if my camera is off my side and I'm bouncing it off a table or a chair or something, this lens hood with the rubber on the end is going to be more helpful than having a filter on there. And then you get to experience everything the glass has to offer you with none of the potential drawbacks of using another piece of glass on top of it.
One thing I like to do is rather than just getting the traditional wide angle shots, especially at wedding days, so your brain is like, oh, I need to get an exterior, I gotta go wide, I gotta get that 20, I gotta get that 24. I think exteriors and wide shots look a lot more interesting when they're actually shot at something like 50 or 150 from way far back. Sometimes you can't do this, but today we can. Here's a shot of the hotel.
Here in Iceland, I've been using this lens on a Sony A7RV, and the files are really, really nice. As I mentioned, 150 at f2 looks beautiful, and f2 across the entire range actually looks beautiful. This is a GM lens, which means that it is the top tier of quality for manufacturing for Sony, and it really does feel like it.
And another thing to mention about landscape photography, it might say 24 to 70, it's gonna get me everything out here, but I would argue that if you bring a 70-200 or this 50 to 150, you're gonna get a lot of more interesting photos that you wouldn't have expected to capture. And it's true what they say, big landscape, big lens. Maybe I just say that, I don't know. It's a pretty cool Defender over here. Let's see if I can grab one photo before they disappear.
This lens is white. That's the talking point on that. It is white, it is not black. I would prefer if it was black, but I feel like once Sony gets into the larger sizes here, I feel like they start to go white. But I feel like it used to be for sports that if you're gonna be outside in the hot sun, white is a little bit better, it absorbs less heat. So maybe they're onto something with this, but overall, I would prefer if it wasn't this color, unfortunately. So I'm sure the people are gonna be wrapping these pretty quick. If you do buy one, just wrap it in a different color, make it camo, get that camo wedding lens. In terms of usefulness for a wedding day, 50 to 150 is incredible. It will absolutely 100% replace your need for a 70 to 200 during a ceremony. At least in all the ceremonies that I photograph, maybe if you're only doing gigantic churches, maybe you still need that 200 reach. But if you are on a camera like this A7RV, I set my C2 button up here to go into crop mode so that if I do need that extra reach, I can put this into APS-C mode and the 150mm lens all of a sudden becomes a 225. I do this for video as well, and I find it maybe even more helpful in video than I do in just photography. The rendering of this lens is amazing. The autofocus backgrounds feel so good. The focus, the fall in and the fall off, it really is a beautiful lens and one that I'm so happy that I've been able to use out here. There is one negative to this lens, and maybe the only, I guess maybe there's two depending on personal preference, and one kind of for sure negative. The one negative for sure is the price, and it's a bit of a bummer that it's priced so high. But yeah, it does make sense because you're replacing a lot of your prime lenses, and there's for sure a balance in there somewhere. But for me, it's priced a little bit too high that I'm not sure if it's gonna be a lens that I'm getting. And while it is beautiful and lovely, I would find the 28 to 70 f2 is going to be a more useful all-day wedding lens for me. I find that, well, starting at 50, you can get by most of the day. I definitely am craving for a little bit wider in some certain situations. And if I am using that Tamron 35 to 150, a lot of my images are actually at either 35 or 150, and very few of them are in that 50 to 125 range. A lot of it's either stacked at either the wide end or the long end. And I do feel myself missing a little bit of the wide end on this lens. Overall, I am so happy that Sony made this lens. This is an incredible, I like when companies surprise me and they're like, this is the product that we're releasing. That makes me really happy that they're continuing to push and not just fall into, I feel like we kind of hit this quality plateau in for sure camera bodies, but then also in lenses, that while companies are trying different things, I never find them to be an incredibly useful thing. I find this to be incredibly useful, and I'm very happy that Sony is still experimenting and making lenses that are for more of a niche audience, especially for us in the wedding space. And that's all. Thanks for watching. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them down below. I'm Taylor Jackson, and I'll see you again next time.
And don't forget, if you do want to get in on those free 1500 Imagine edits, there's a link down below, and soon they're going to be doing video as well. So currently it's in beta and it's free to use, so you can sign up for that if you want. And Imagine is a company that I use for all of my wedding photography and now video.